Now, creators are at loggerheads with the National Arts Council over alleged non-transparency in the allocation of 300 million rand from the Presidential Employment Stimulus Program. Artists, creatives, heritage sector workers as well as cultural workers have camped at the NAC offices in Johannesburg for almost 3 weeks to compel the council to respond to their answers. In a recent open letter, musician and producer Chikosa Lotwala accused a fellow musician Arthur Mafokate of misappropriating COVID-19 relief funds. To discuss this further, I'm joined now by Mr. Chikosa Lotwala himself, as well as Dr. Sipho Sithole from the National Arts Council. He's a board member as well as the head of communications. Gentlemen, a very good afternoon to you both. Welcome to the Daytime Update.
Thank you very much.
Perhaps let's start at the top with a letter that you wrote, it was an open letter addressed to Arthur Mafokate. Let's just call that up. And if you perhaps haven't seen this letter, here's an extract from that letter that Chico wrote to. It was an open letter regarding the monies that were gotten by Arthur Mafokate. A part of the letter reads, "It is practically not ethical to be asking for government COVID relief assistance at the expense of our struggling colleagues when we both know that we have enough resources to sustain ourselves during this pandemic." Now, this is just an extract from the letter that you, Silo, wrote as an open letter. Why did you feel the need to write this letter, and what were you hoping to achieve?
Well, you'll recall that when the president announced the PSP to help our sector with stimulus, the first amount I think that was announced was 1.6 billion, if I'm not mistaken. And it was reduced to about 300 million. And the reason why it was reduced is because the government does not have, to me, looked at me, the government doesn't have enough money to give us. Now, so my problem was that, when I wrote the letter to Arthur, I'm in the same sector with Arthur. I know who's making money. I know who's not making money. I've worked with Arthur before during the ANC election campaigns and all that. Besides that, I know Arthur to be a very successful business person. So I wasn't too happy, to see him queuing, getting money that's supposed to be earned by struggling artists. I know a lot of artists. I work with artists. I see them complaining or calling us, how can you assist us and all that. So I just thought it was not necessary for him to actually queue and ask for money, whereas he has enough resources to look after himself. So that's the reason why I did it. I wrote the letter.
Were your allegations based on assumptions, or did you have factual information at hand?
Well, the information, what upsets me more, it's not the 20,000 that you applied for. If you, actually, I discovered the companies that are linked to Arthur. His company, 999, received 1.8 million approval. And another company called Roadshow Music received 1.9 million, in which he is the sole director of that company. Another company, Queendom, which is owned by a 19-year-old daughter, was approved for 712,000. Diva Entertainment, which I believe is deregistered. That's Tommy's company. It was awarded 2 million rand. So now, if you look at the whole, what you can see that there is, I'm not saying Arthur has no right to apply, but there were more than 6,000 applications, If you look at all Arthur's companies, they received the funds. One could tell easily that he was assisted by someone at National Arts Council. There's no way that none of his associates, all the people that work closely with him, they've been approved, and other people are not approved. You understand? Hence, I actually got upset because, why does he have to use 7, 8 companies to apply, and all of them approved?
And perhaps at this point, let me point out that we did try and get hold of Mr. Arthur Mafokate so that he could be part of this conversation. We were unsuccessful in our attempts, so we could also give him the right of reply in this instance. But let me bring you in, Dr. Setole. Can you confirm what Mr. Twala has put in place now, these companies that are all owned and somehow associated with Arthur Mafokate having received up to a sum total of 5 million rand? What have your investigations revealed?
Firstly, let me say greetings to my dear friend, Chico. And, you know, Tammy, there's a saying that says that when two elephants are fighting, it is the grass that suffers. Now we have the two giants, Arthur and Chico, talking about this. And Tina, as the National Arts Council, we need to then look at, first of all, I don't think that Chico didn't write the letter to the National Arts Council. He wrote it to Arthur. So I'm going to try and to be as general as possible in my response without discussing Arthur the individual. Let me put it this way. Had we been at the helm of the Arts Council, National Arts Council last year, and then we were presented with an over-budget situation, sensibility then says we probably would have approached various companies, just like we did with one instance, for instance, where one company applied for more than one project and had gotten approved. And we were able to say, if one company had applied for more than one project, based on the fact that we don't have enough money, we will approach them to only fund, because they had already been approved, only the one that has got the highest value. So that was easy for us to make a decision as the new national council of the NAC. The one that was brought to our attention, as you rightly say in the letter, we had not been aware of each individual organization because we didn't pay particular attention to the detail that Uchiko is now mentioning. But let me just get to the point that I probably would have said if we had seen that there was an over-budget situation. We would have probably then approached whoever was affected to say, hey, Keida, Asenamal, you know, we see that you've got all of these companies that have been approved and we don't have enough money to share around the table. We suggest that maybe you withdraw some of these companies so that we have enough money remaining to claw back so that we can share with the remaining applicants. But that we were not there when this happens. We didn't even know the various companies that are being discussed that Arthur had applied. So the best thing that we could do, we would have to seek legal advice, because remember, these are all legal entities in their own right that had applied in their own right as standalone legal entities, much as there's one person behind them. To then seek legal entities to say, what would have been the options that we could adopt as the National Arts Council, knowing what we know now. Now, this matter has not been brought to the council.
But let me put it this way, Dr. Stoller. The matter has now been brought to the council. Yes, this letter was not directed to you, but now you know the details. Have you looked into this? Has this in fact happened? Has Arthur's different companies indeed been paid 5 million rand? And what are you going to do about it? Yes, you say it is the new council that's on board now, but I think it's important for us to deal with institutions and not individuals, because at this rate, everybody's going to be washing their hands and they're going to be saying, as you are saying now, that I wasn't there. But the truth is the National Arts Council is, quote unquote, an accomplice in this dynamic.
Yes, you are asking the right question. We cannot absolve our responsibility once we know new information having been presented to us. What has not happened yet is that we're now expecting the CEO to then present to us this item on the agenda to say we have gone and investigated. Yes, it is true. These are the companies. This is the value. For instance, the value that you are mentioning, we wouldn't know what the value is. But we have heard that there are companies that are associated with Mr. Mafokate that had applied, you know, whether it was his daughter or whatever. We need to have this item on the agenda, and I'm hoping that through the chairperson or the acting chairperson, we will have this item on the agenda this week so that we can pronounce on it once and for all. We owe the public that answer to say how are we going to deal with it, and we're not going to shy away from it. It is a matter, it has been brought to our attention, we have to deal with it.
Sello, in your open letter, you say that you have a lot of respect for Mr. Mafokate, that this is nothing personal, but really it's an issue of Ubuntu. Has he reached out to you? Have you had any sort of communication with him post the release of this letter? And if so, what has been the nature of your engagement?
Yes. Actually, I think when he's the first person, actually, I said the first person to reflect other before the letter was circulated to social media, whatever. But now, obviously, we didn't receive it with open hands. He was not happy. He told me that he was not happy because I didn't call him personally to discuss this matter. My response to him was that, look, for me, it was an open letter because these things are happening and I just want the public to know about it. And they said I misquoted him, blah, blah, and all those things. Well, so far, I said, look, in short, we never actually agree on whatever everything. Doesn't agree with me.
Has the money been paid out to him?
I'm not sure. Maybe Dr. Stolle can respond to that. But I'm told some of the money, he did receive some of the money.
Dr. Stolle, in the eventuality that he was paid, perhaps let's start with whether you can confirm whether he was paid those amounts or not.
I'm not aware that any of Arthur's companies have been paid so far. All I know that we have paid about 330 organizations to the in excess of 37 million rands. As to whether that involves his company, from what I know so far is that he has not been paid anything. But of course, that is public information. If it has happened, we will disclose it.
And how are you going to deal with the discrepancy here? Because the numbers that I have is that initially 1,374 applications were approved, that 613 were allocated 285 million rand, and that there's a shortfall of 761 applicants who had been approved, but now because of overpayment to some companies will no longer be eligible to receive any financing. Has that been resolved? Will those 760 plus companies now be getting the money that they were told they would be getting?
No, that matter has been resolved. It is the first thing that we put our tab on it to say the reason why we halted the payment of the initial approved applicants, which of course was not well received because people already had contracts and letters, was precisely this reason that we were saying, why are you leaving 761 people out when you've already adjudicated and approved them? So part of the exercise that we did was to make sure that we level the playing field, we apply equity and fairness, so that all the 1,374 approved applications do receive the grant. It was precisely for that reason that we also discovered that there was a company that had applied for more than one project, which we then said cancelled. We then there were people who had approved. We then also made a decision that if you had been approved for more than 2 million, we will put a ceiling at 2 million. That was all part of the clawback of that. And as a result of that, we were then able to go back to the industry to say all approved, adjudicated and approved applications will receive a grant, except that we needed to then change all the contracts and all the letters to revise them to the point where we could now say that our work now is really about making sure that by the 31st of March, every approved applicant that has been cleared as compliant and clear and there are no issues is paid by the 31st of March. We are now focusing just on receiving the contracts back and making sure that within 72 hours of those contracts having been received and signed, there are payments made, because we are still far from the entire 285 million to pay. I mean, I've just said now that we've only paid under 40 million. And today is the 22nd. We have to really run against the clock, rush against the clock to make sure that everyone is paid. Just to re-emphasize again, there's nobody left out now.
So, Mr. Sithole, will you in some instances be maybe asking for refunds for those who have been overpaid? And, you know, Mr. Mofokate happens to be a case in point here because his name has been mentioned, but this may not be the only situation or case.
What we did, in instances where people were paid more than what we thought were supposed to have been paid, I'm not sure whether you are saying Arthur was overpaid, because it's a different issue. There are people who were approved for more than what they'd asked for. And in some instances, they've already been given 70% of that amount. We are not taking that money back. We are not recalling the money. All what we are saying is that they won't receive the remaining 30%. So we are not calling the money back. We have done the calculations that make us come at break-even point, even with that overpayment in certain instances. Even in instances where people were even within the limit of their approval and they were paid the 70%, we are not calling that money back.
Thank you, Dr. Sithole. Let's round off with you, Mr. Twala. What has the word on the ground been as far as the artists are concerned? Are they satisfied with the measures that the NAC is putting forward? In your open letter, you also mentioned the names of individuals who were perhaps band members who you personally knew were in dire straits. What is the sentiment from the artists' perspective, especially those who have been camping at the NAC for a long time now?
Ma'am, it's raining and I'm outside. Can you repeat your question?
Yes, the question is, what are the sentiments from the artists? Are they satisfied with the NAC and the way that they're responding to these complaints?
Ma'am, it's logic that, you know, in government, you can't satisfy everybody. You know, there are people who are going to actually be compromised. Yeah? It doesn't matter how desperate we are, you know. But in this case, hence, you know, when I pulled out, we don't actually expect everyone to get money. But the people that I've actually mentioned in my letter that are disadvantaged, there's nothing like this in the National Arts Council. Obviously, the National Arts Council, I'm not sure, but we are.
Unfortunately, we'll have to leave our conversation at that. Our line is continuing to deteriorate. But I thank you both, gentlemen, for your time and your insights today. That was Dr. Sipho Sithole, board member of the National Arts Council, as well as head of communications, and Mr. Chiko Selotwala, renowned musician and producer.